There's a Catholic prophecy that tells of a 3-day period of darkness, like a night that just won't end. During this time, the air will be laden with pestilence. There will be hideous demons roaming the earth, and only blessed candles will be able to provide light. Not only will there be punishment for those foolish enough to exit their homes, but this will also spell the end for any and all enemies of the church.
It's kind of given a plagiarism.
Well, not exactly plagiarism per se, more like an adaptation. Octopath's many gods are integral to its world building. Without them, we wouldn't have super moves, classes, or likely even a story to begin with. And since these gods are, for all intents and purposes, indisputably real in this world, they can be used as vessels for real-life religious allegories, taking what are legends in real life and making them canon to the world of Celestia. Now, the relationship between Octopath and the aforementioned prophecy mainly lies within the Journey for Dawn segment, but there's many connections even before that. The first of which we'll talk about is the Night of the Scarlet Moon. The Night of the Scarlet Moon is a prophesized event in Ochet's story where it's her ultimate purpose to stop this event and save the world from destruction. In the Book of Revelations chapter 6, verse 12, it says, "And I believe when he had opened the sixth seal, and, lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as a sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood." Pretty obvious connection there. I mean, the moon is literally becoming... It's basically a blood moon without calling it a blood moon. And then later, or I guess earlier, in the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 31, it says, "The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord come." Now, obviously, if you've played Ochet's chapters, you'll know that there's no great and powerful lord that's returning at the end of her story. However, there is the Darkling character, which is the opposite companion that you choose not to pick at the beginning of her story, and that character basically returns and attacks the island of Totohaha, and it's Ochet's job to stop him. Anyway, obviously there's not actually a god here, but there is a terrible event happening with the battle against the Darkling. And I think later we actually do meet a god. Next I want to talk about Hikari's path. Now his path follows his ascent to the throne and dethrone of General Mugen. Mugen is essentially Hikari's evil brother who forcefully takes over the throne himself and later goes on a genocidal rampage against the people of Sa. There's also Trousseau's Purple Rain event at the end of Cassie's story where he tries to genocide basically the entire world through poison. There's also Terra's earthquakes in Ochet's story, which I don't know if are totally related here, but I wanted to point it out as a possibility. All of these events connect to a couple verses from the book of Matthew. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 7 through 11, it says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you. And ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many." While, like I said, I'm not totally sure about Terra's role in all of this, what I can say is, while Mugen and Trousseau's actions are certainly deplorable, they may just be biblical. In that set of verses was also a mention of false prophets. Just about everybody in the Moonshade Order is a false prophet. There's Mint, aka Arcanet. She's the most textbook example because she's literally working for the church. And there's also Kazan, Ori, Claude. These people are more adjacent examples because they're not really claiming to speak for God or a god. They're just trying to bring back the wicked god. They're more so wolves in sheep's clothing, if you were to ask me. That just about covers it for everything that happens in everybody's individual chapters. Next, I want to get into what happens after. Now, as the world is healing from everybody's individual stories, the travelers still have one last journey in their adventures. Again, in Matthew 24, verse 29, it says, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken." And boy, the powers of the heavens certainly were shaken. As we begin the epilogue, we first start with all of our travelers meeting around a campfire, celebrating their victories and contemplating their futures. It's a beautiful and awesome scene for sure, one of the top 10 crossovers in gaming history. As everyone goes to sleep, they all share the same dream of the sacred flame extinguishing, all 4 of them. And later, everyone wakes up. It's time for morning, but the dawn hasn't arrived yet. Where did the sun go? Remember the earthquakes I mentioned from Matthew chapter 4 and Revelation 6? Now, these technically could have been Terra, like I said, kinda doubt that. More likely, they're the rising of the Vidania, which is the battlefield of the gods that we see rising at the end of everybody's shared dream. So as the world has been plunged into an endless night, it's time to begin what are called the 3 days of darkness, or the journey for dawn. So let's actually talk about the legend, shall we? It comes from a Catholic seer in the late 1800s, the Blessed Anna Maria Taigi. And basically what she does is expand upon what's already written in the Bible. It goes like this: God will send 2 punishments. One will be in the form of wars, revolutions, and other evils. It shall originate on earth. The other will be sent from heaven. There shall come over the whole earth an intense darkness lasting 3 days and 3 nights. Nothing can be seen, and the air will be laden with pestilence which will claim many, but not only the enemies of religion. It will be impossible to use any man-made lighting during this darkness, except blessed candles. He who out of curiosity opens his window to look out or leaves his home will fall dead on the spot. During these 3 days, people should remain in their homes, pray the rosary, and beg God for mercy. All the enemies of the church, whether known or unknown, will perish over the whole earth during that universal darkness, with the exception of a few whom God will soon convert. The air shall be infected by demons who will appear under all sorts of hideous forms. So here I want to break down the legend line by line and connect it with its parallels within the game. First up, God will send 2 punishments. One will be in the form of wars, revolutions, and other evils. It shall originate on earth. Now this I believe connects with the game's main 8 storylines. Throughout all of them we see tons of despicable events and terrible people. We see Harvey, everything he did to Oswald's daughter Elena, the death of Temenos' boyfriend Crick. Horrible. There's Cassidy's story, everything Trousseau did. There's Ochet's story with everything with the Dark Hunter and the Darkling. There's Throne's chapters where we learn about everything Claude did and how many kids he had. That man. There's also Particio's business ventures. All that capitalism, disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. So much conflict in all of these stories, and none of it is from the heavens in any real way. It's all started by the people of Celestia. And the next line says, the other will be sent from heaven. Now this part is interesting because there's no direct interactions with any of the 13 gods for the most part, other than the character's super moves and Temenos' little show in chapter 1. But the journey for dawn is caused directly by the god Vide. He's essentially inspired everyone in the Moonshade Order to finally take action so that he can come back and take over the world and destroy it. Everything up until this point was a worldly threat, but this is anything but. There shall come over the whole earth an intense darkness lasting 3 days and 3 nights. This one's pretty obvious. Look outside. Nothing can be seen, and the air will be laden with pestilence which will claim many, but not only the enemies of religion. If we look at the world map, we can see this like purplish gas covering the entire land. It's mostly concentrated in the areas that we need to visit and restore the sacred flames. I mean, I would definitely call this like pestilence. It's purple, it's very much like the purple rain that Trousseau caused, and it's bringing out a lot of very heinous things. It will be impossible to use any man-made lighting during this darkness, except blessed candles. This part isn't represented in the game too well, I would say. There's lights all over Celestia that are still operating. I think this is more of just an artistic choice, because otherwise it would just be way too dark and you wouldn't really be able to see anything, honestly. There is, however, the sacred flame, which is quite literally a blessed light, and bringing them all back is the key to defeating Vide. He, who out of curiosity, opens his window to look out or leaves his home will fall dead on the spot. During these 3 days, people should remain in their homes, pray the rosary, and beg God for mercy. Now again, this part isn't represented in the game super well either. We see people walking around all normally, you can talk to everybody just as you would during regular chapters. And then we get to Flame Church. This place is where it makes the most sense for it to be the most biblically accurate. As soon as we get to this town, we see that there's nobody here. It's quite scary, honestly. And we can definitely sense that there's someone on the prowl. Mint. As we approach Mint, she reveals her secret identity as Arcanet, the leader of the Moonshade Order. We battle her in the middle of the street in a completely deserted flame church. Where is everybody? They're not in their houses, they're not in the church.
But this smell, it's the scent of humans.
Ochet says that she could sense some of them hiding, but I don't fully buy this. I think Arcanet must have killed some of them. All of the enemies of the church, whether known or unknown, will perish over the whole earth during that universal darkness, with the exception of a few whom God will soon convert. Now obviously here we have Arcanet, Vide, and the other Moonshade Order members. Now obviously there's no one left at the end of the story for God to convert into like good people, I guess. So that part of the line is not really applicable here. However, the part about enemies of religion perishing during this event is definitely accurate. Lastly, the air shall be infected by demons who will appear under all sorts of hideous forms. This, I believe, is just all of the enemies that we fight that are consumed by the shadow. They have this like purplish hue to them, and they're much more powerful than their normal counterparts. They're pretty darn scary enemies, okay? But you know my favorite part about this whole event? It's a short little travel banter between Temenos and Throne. After restoring the Sacred Flame in Flame Church, the two talk about an upcoming concert in the village, and the children gleaming with excitement for it. Despite everything that's going on, these kids are never giving up their hope for the dawn. So as we travel to Vidania, confront Oboro, and take on Vide, we do so with the hope of every hopeful person of Celestia in our hearts. We will bring back the dawn. What happens after the 3 days of darkness is not totally clear. The seers prophesizing the event don't explain what will occur, and the Bible only briefly talks about the purification of the world before going into the 7th seal. What we do know is, all of the members of the Moonshade Order, including their god Vide, are all dead. In addition, all of the sacred flames are restored and are as strong as ever. In the book of Revelation, chapter 7, verse 1, it says, "And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree." And that's it for the 3 Days of Darkness story, and also for the game. We do see the epilogue where they go to Agnia's concert, but that's pretty much it. There's no more adventures, no more battles to fight. The world's at peace. I hope they're all happy, and I hope they live good lives. And even though the world keeps going, we don't really need to know what happens next. Not everything needs to be explained. Now, in my mind, the connection between Octopath and this prophecy is crystal clear, and I'd be astonished if the writers just coincidentally wrote such a similar tale for the game. There is no such thing as a coincidence. I do have to say, it's not a perfect one-to-one adaptation. There's some inaccuracies like only blessed candles providing light, being killed if one steps outside their home, and the time limit of 3 days. But that doesn't really matter to me. It's a stylized take on the prophecy, and the game had to take a few liberties if it was really going to make it its own. And I'm glad it did. I'm going to do something new here and give the game what I'm calling an adaptation score, just based on how I feel the game accurately depicted the prophecy and added its own sort of flair to it. And the score I'm going to give it here is a B. It's not perfect, but it's really fun, and it's the greatest Octopath story I have ever seen. I love it. I definitely wouldn't say that someone should use Octopath as their only source of information about this legend. However, the similarities are remarkable. But hey, that's just a theory. This video was made in collaboration between me and my friend Aiden. Thanks for doing all that hard research.